Hi, I'm Benton Stokes.
And I'm Elane O'Rourke.
And this is Cocktail Theology. Hi there.
Hi there.
How are you?
I am good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I am sitting here with a cocktail that you made, which is always a good thing. And, I get to talk to you about really, really wonderful things. So there we are.
Yeah, it's a good day. We are enjoying a cocktail today called Paper Plane. I don't know if it's a classic cocktail. I don't know how long it's been around. I've seen it at restaurants and things, but I've only become acquainted with it probably within the last year. It's a bourbon-based cocktail. However, it has 3 spirits in it. It has bourbon. It has Amaro Nonino, which we like a lot. It's an Italian Amaro. It's, I don't even know how to describe the flavor of it. It's rich and kind of sweet and it's yummy.
A little nutty.
And then the third ingredient, some folks use Campari. I used Aperol. We like Aperol around here kind of better than Campari. It's not that they're the same, but we interchange them around here a lot. We use Aperol and Negronis and other things that are traditionally Campari drinks. So this one has Aperol, and then it has lemon juice, fresh squeezed. And the nice thing about a Paper Plane is that it's equal parts everything.
Like a Negroni.
Yeah.
Although I mess with Negronis. I started to say a different word entirely, but yes, I mess with the proportions on Negronis. So.
Yes, but this is equal parts. So it's a very balanced drink, even though there's bourbon in there. It's just one of the players in the drinks. And so it comes off very fresh and balanced. The lemon is nice.
Mm-hmm. Which bourbon did you use?
I used Bullet.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So we're enjoying that. And today we're taking on another term. This season we're going to devote some episodes to language, words, phrases that either maybe the meaning is unclear, maybe the word has been used to make you feel less than in some way about yourself or even about God. We tackled born again in an earlier episode. Tonight we're talking about grace. What is grace? What does that mean? And I think depending on your faith tradition, it could mean a wide variety of things. For myself, I'll just say, growing up in kind of fundamentalist background, grace was defined as God's unmerited favor, meaning God being magnanimous toward us in such a way that we don't get what we deserve, but we get God's abundance instead. Mercy is like the idea that you don't get what you deserve, which mercy is another word we could tackle at another time. But grace is more like, and in exchange for that punishment, I give you abundant life. Or I give you this. And so it's like an act of God's magnanimous kindness toward us.
Right, but it sounds like magnanimous kindness, like with a sharp edge to it.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's been my understanding of what the word means. And so now, because my theology is dramatically different than it was in those days, I will admit to you that I'm not sure what I think grace means. I do fully believe that God extends grace to us, and I believe that God is a very gracious and graceful God. But how to talk about that, I'm just not real sure.
Luckily, I am.
I'm so glad one of us is.
Yes. So I was thinking about your unmerited favor today. And what I like about that one is that you haven't earned it. Mm-hmm. And so it takes away that sense that you have to earn love or earn generosity or earn kindness.
Yes.
Because first of all, it's not possible.
It's not.
And secondly, that's not who God is.
Right.
So I do like that piece. I was thinking that one of the things we might do is distinguish grace from mercy. I think that may be helpful.
I think so.
So let's start with that. Mercy is always, you're not getting what you deserve in the negative sense.
Yes.
Okay? So you've done something wrong, you're going to be punished for it, and someone extends mercy by commuting that sentence or by lessening the sentence. That's mercy. Okay? Mercy would also be if somebody's suffering and you reach in and are kind to them and help them in their suffering, right?
Right.
So the Good Samaritan is a merciful character.
Yes.
Okay? So that's mercy. So mercy is actually pretty easy because it's a word we use pretty well actually in common language. It hasn't strayed very much from its biblical meaning.
Well, it doesn't sound like it has a biblical meaning that's apart from the way that we use it
Exactly.
in our common vernacular.
Exactly. So the problem with grace is it gets confused with mercy. So people, particularly pastors, I'm not sure why particularly pastors, but will use the word grace instead of mercy or use them interchangeably, and that's just not right, right? Christian philosopher Dallas Willard talked about grace as being God's providing your ability to do something you could not otherwise do.
Okay.
So, for example, in that thinking, 12-step programs, aiding one's getting sober, includes God's grace in that. The power has been given to one to do things one could not otherwise do.
Oh, okay.
That's an interesting one, but it winds up being so technical that I find it not helpful. So, I think that for the word grace, we need to back up about 150 years.
Okay.
Okay? And think about when people use the word grace to mean sympathy of a particular kind. So the example, I think I mentioned this one to you the other day, and this is not 150, it's more like 100, but still. So there's a wonderful story, and I want to say it's about the Duke of Windsor. There's a big banquet, and the Duke of Windsor or someone like the Duke of Windsor is sitting there. They serve finger bowls, right? So finger bowls, for those of you who haven't been at multi-course crazy dinners with 500 pieces of silver, a finger bowl is simply a bowl of water that one can dip one's fingers in to rinse them and then go on to the next course. There were finger bowls put before each of the people. And someone at the table did not know this custom of finger bowls and so drank from the finger bowl, which is a pretty horrifying thought, right? I mean, if you're at this very formal dinner and everybody's doing everything exactly like everybody else.
Right.
This particular person, the lord or duke or whoever it was, and this is a wonderful story, picked up his finger bowl and drank from it as well. So that the person at the table would not feel the embarrassment and humiliation. That's grace. Okay?
I love that.
So grace, rather than it being about deserving, not deserving, any of those things, grace is about receiving a tender action that acknowledges who one is and extends a kindness to one. That's grace. Okay?
I like that.
So it starts from a very different position. So mercy has something to do with one being in a bad state. Okay? Either one has done something wrong or one is suffering.
And someone is in a position either to offer pardon, which means they're in a position of authority over that person.
Yes.
Or they're a person that has something that you need or want.
Yes. So their authority is a great word in the mercy thing, right? That's a really good word. Grace is a sweeter thing. And this is where Willard's definition of it being power to do something you could not otherwise do actually can work in. It takes some effort. But so if we're thinking about the guy who drank the finger bowl before the Duke did, the guy did not do anything wrong. It was wrong because of context. Yeah. And what happened was he was seen, he was noticed, and treated in a benevolent way that put him in good relationship with everybody else there. And the Duke, having authority of his own, but not having authority over that person, lowered himself, if you will, which made then everybody have to do the same thing. So, going back to Jesus for a minute, which we hadn't mentioned until now, but darn it. You know that I think that the big sacrifice of God was not on the cross, it was choosing to be embodied.
Yes.
If you think about that, not in terms of God sent his son to be murdered, but instead thought God lowered God's self to the earth, made God's self, and what I mean by lowered is made God's self vulnerable.
Yes.
Okay, not worse, but vulnerable in a way that God is not. That's grace.
I love that.
That is how I think one should define grace. It actually hasn't strayed that far from the common meaning, but churches have done weird craziness with it.
A lot. I'm a worship leader as well, and I think about all of the worship music that mentions grace or has grace as a central theme, and how different these songs can be as they talk about grace.
Yes.
And I'm finding that, particularly with School for Seekers, when I'm leading worship, I'm looking at songs that are consistent with our theology, and many, many times I run across a song that's about grace, and it's really about, wow, I suck, and God saved me. Grace, 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 grace.
Right. And they're taking it from the Amazing Grace idea, right? But notice that it's a sweet sound.
When I sing Amazing Grace, or when I read the lyrics to Amazing Grace, I know there's the line in there that says, saved a wretch like me. But I don't think that the lyricist, the writer, meant that I was always a terrible, terrible person, or I was always like I was born a wretch. But I think he's somebody that recognizes that he was in a wretched state.
Yes.
He was in a terrible spot.
Yes.
And God rescued him.
Yes.
That's the way that I sing it. And so I'm not ever really offended by that, but I think what you're saying is exactly right. I think it's been misinterpreted.
Yes.
And then people write other songs and they think, well, Amazing Grace is a big hit, so we're just going to, we're going to restate that. But to do it in a way that basically says, I am an innately bad person
Is not
who
true.
is in need
Right.
of God to just kind of smile on me.
Exactly. And this is one of the challenges with using songs that are not taken from contemporary vernacular. The word wretch and wretched, that was a very common term. It
Right.
meant that you felt lousy.
Yes, exactly.
You were
Right.
in a bad state. And because the idea of one's feelings and one's physicality were merged in those years, one could feel wretched because one had stomach flu, or one could feel wretched because one had been dumped by one's lover. There's lots of wretchedness in there.
Yes.
But it has nothing to do with someone having done something wrong or being, as you said, forever bad.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
But instead, if you think about grace as being, and this is where the unmerited, I wouldn't use favor's tricky, but unmerited kindness.
Unmerited kindness, yeah.
Right? Is perfect for that one.
Of course.
Right? Because what in the story, in the song, what God does is see the poor state of this fellow and say, I'm going to give you some help here because that's the kind of person I am. I don't want you to do better. I don't want you to feel so bad.
Right. And then what God does is, with that grace, we are given that opportunity to do better.
Yes.
It's not just a once and for all, God says, you are absolved.
No.
But instead it is an empowering, which is what you're talking
Which
about.
is what Willard's talking about.
Yeah. And so it's an empowering
Exactly.
so that in God's grace, I can do better. I can do better things. I can be better in the world.
Yes.
I am empowered to be more like Jesus.
Yes. You as a worship leader, and I have heard you accompany people whose singing was not their greatest strength. And one of the things I have noticed you doing is sort of backing off of what might be the standard accompaniment, adding in to give them some underpinning and to fill in the sound, but you're not pushing them. You're kind of putting a hammock of music underneath the singing.
Sure.
That's grace. You are giving them grace. You don't have power over them in the sense that they've done something horribly wrong and you have the right to absolve them. Instead, what you're doing is saying, here's this wretched estate, if you will, and I'm using big air quotes, people. This person's in wretched estate, and I can be thoughtful and generous in this, and it takes nothing from me. I don't have to prove myself in any way. I don't have to show what a great accompanist I am, and wow, how it should have been done had you only been a good singer, you.
Right.
But we've all known those people.
Of course.
Instead, because it costs you nothing. I think that's part of the idea of grace, is that it costs the giver nothing.
Yeah.
It's just a sweet generosity that then gives power to the other person to gather oneself and move on.
So grace is something that we give as well as God.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, growing up in the church that I did, grace was very much like, you don't deserve this, and God is just being God
Right.
and smiling on you, you horrible worm.
Right. See, it's the you horrible worm. I mean, the fact is we don't deserve, because desert is about earning.
Earning, right.
You never earn somebody's
No.
love. You never earn somebody's kindness.
No.
I mean, you can't earn that stuff, right? But it's important to understand no one can earn any of those things. They're always about the other person in certain ways, right? So, yes, it's true. One doesn't deserve it, but that idea is irrelevant when it comes to grace. And that's why that condemning way of thinking about grace, that sense that you horrible worm is your underlying state, misses the concept of grace completely.
Yes, it does.
Okay, I'm getting riled up now.
Sorry
I think we
about
need
that.
to talk about this another hour and a half, but not with these poor people listening in. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So if our listeners are the kind of people who have that sense that grace is this almost shameful thing, I think I want to try and tease that out a little bit. I think it might be useful. I would love to hear from our listeners on this. When is a time when you've been extended grace? When somebody could have ignored you or not helped you or made you feel bad, but didn't.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything like that you would be willing to share with us? We would love to know your stories.
Here's one that comes to mind. So sometimes we will have a problem going on that others are aware of. We owe money. We have something weighing on us. We have embarrassed ourselves in front of someone, one of those kinds of things, right? We have something going on, and somebody who has no role in it does something, right? So it would be like the person who steps out, who you don't have an automatic relationship with, who, if you owe money, says, hey, I've got the money. Here you go. Pay me back when you can.
Yeah.
That's a grace, right? Or if you have embarrassed yourself, I'm thinking about, forgive me for this. I mean, it's not a bad example, but it's a kind of a weird example. I'm thinking about when girls start their period at school.
Right.
It can be this hugely embarrassing thing because they're unprepared, right? So then the other girl who loans a sweater to go around the waist, or the adult who takes her to the restroom, or, one of those things where it's like, you got no dog in this fight, but there's somebody you can help and move on.
Right.
I wonder if one of the reasons that grace is so hard for us is it happens to us so much.
It happens to us so much, yeah. And I think we have so many opportunities to extend it to other people, particularly if we live a grace-filled life.
Yes. Yes. When we focus on all of the times that the car running the red light didn't hit us, places where God has extended kindness to us and just, has our back. The person calls out of the blue, you're not expecting. It's just so nice to hear them. Or you get to see someone you adore every single day, right? Those are things we don't think about as grace, and yet that's what they are.
That's what they are.
Maybe if we thought about, if we attributed all of the goodness, all of the provision, all of the kindness, everything to God or God's action in our lives, we would realize just that we live grace-filled lives.
We do.
And sometimes we notice it because we're in a wretched place and we say, oh, wow, that was really nice of you.
Yeah.
We can't earn anyone's love, including God's, but we don't have to. That's the thing, is we don't have to.
Right. I love that. What are your experiences with grace? What are questions you have about grace or mercy? Feel free to email us always, Elane, E-L-A-N-E, at schoolforseekers.com, or Benton, B-E-N-T-O-N, at schoolforseekers.com.
If you have scripture or experience that contradicts something we've said, please share it with us, because we learn from you as well. We learn from your experience. We learn from your understanding,
That's right.
Especially if we're talking about scripture or the experience of God. We do not have all of it, right? If your experience of God is something different, or you come from a different faith tradition, or any of those things, please share that with us. We want to know more. We want to learn more.
We do.
We are not coming to you with the idea that we've got it all figured out and you better learn it. No. So please do share that stuff with us.
Definitely do. Also, other ideas for episodes or cocktails, we love to know about those. We are recording a lot right now. We will be putting out weekly episodes on Thursdays going forward. As we record this, our first episode is out today.
And what's the first episode that's out today, Benton?
Reclaiming the phrase born again. So that was our very first conversation for this season, just about a month ago when we started recording new episodes. We're very excited to finally be sharing these episodes with you all.
Yes.
It's been a long time. We are trying to tackle a lot this season, and we want your questions and topics, ideas for those. Thank you so much for listening, and please share us. That's how we grow this audience.
We like to be passed around.
We like being passed around. So if you'll share us on your socials and tell friends about it, we would love to grow our audience, and you guys are the best way that we can do that. So thank you for sharing us. Bye, everybody.
Bye.